My phone buzzed with a new ride request, and my chest tightened before I even read it. Pickup, Brielle. Not a Brielle in my town. My Brielle, my wife. The location was the Lakeside Hotel, the one with the bright sign and the fancy glass doors. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. I sat at the curb with my hood up and my cap low, telling myself it had to be a mistake. Then the doors spun open and she walked out laughing, hair smooth, lipstick fresh, like she had all the air in the world. Beside her was a man in a dark coat. His hand rested on her lower back like it belonged there. Brielle opened my back door and slid in. She didn't look at me. She didn't say my name. She said hi, like I was nothing. The man climbed in after her and kissed her neck. "Out of town all weekend?" he asked. "Yep," she said. "He believes whatever I tell him." My throat burned. I forced my voice low. "Where to?" She smiled into her phone. "Airport." I pulled away from the hotel, shaking inside, and wondered one terrible thing. How long had I been the joke? I had been married to Brielle for 9 years, and most days I felt like I had to earn the right to breathe in my own house. She could be sweet in public, but at home she cut me down in small ways that left no bruises. "You're too sensitive," she would say when I flinched. "You're lucky I put up with you," she would add when I tried to talk about how lonely I felt. We had a 6-year-old son, Milo, who still reached for my hand when he crossed the street. Milo was the reason I learned how to stay calm. 2 weeks earlier, my boss at the community center had asked me to attend a weekend training in a nearby city. Brielle acted annoyed, like even my work needs were an insult. Then she brightened fast and said, "Go, I'll manage." That shift in her mood should have warned me. The training got canceled last minute, but I didn't tell her. I picked up extra Uber driving at night to cover a big dentist bill for Milo. I planned to surprise her by paying it off early. Instead, I was the driver at her hotel pickup. I could still hear her say I believed anything. So what did I do with a truth like that? Confront her now or let her keep talking? I drove like a machine, eyes forward, heart loud. The man in the back spoke like he owned the world. "Next time we don't need the hotel," he said. "My place is empty this week." Brielle giggled, and that sound hurt more than yelling ever did. "Not yet," she said. "I need him to stay nice until the papers are ready." My fingers tightened around the wheel. "Papers? That word made my stomach drop," the man asked. "He still checks the bank app?" Brielle sighed. "Not really. He's too busy trying to be the good guy." Then she lowered her voice like she was sharing a cute secret. "If he ever gets loud, I'll tell people he scares me." The man chuckled. "Smart." I swallowed hard, tasting metal. I kept driving, pretending I was just another stranger in the front seat. When we reached the airport drop-off, Brielle leaned forward and said, "5 stars, please," like she was tipping a waiter. They walked away together, not even looking back. I parked around the corner and stared at my Uber history. The trip showed her name, the hotel address, the exact time. I took screenshots. I saved the ride receipt. I checked my dash cam and saw the small red light blinking. My hands shook for the first time that night. I wasn't only hurt. I was scared. Papers meant planning. Planning meant I was already behind. So why was she rushing to the airport, and what papers did she mean? I got home close to midnight. The house was dark except for the little nightlight in Milo's hall. Brielle had texted me an hour earlier. "Girls, night. Staying at my sister's. Don't wait up." I stared at that message until my eyes watered. Then I took a screenshot of it too. I walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge like a normal person, like I hadn't just watched my wife leave a hotel with another man. My hands moved without thinking. I poured water, I sat at the table, I listened to the quiet, it felt too big. At 12:14 a.m. my phone buzzed again, a bank alert, transfer initiated. The amount was large enough to make me dizzy. I opened the app and saw money moving out of our joint savings. The transfer was pending, like a door half open. I didn't know if Brielle did it or if someone else had access, but my mind jumped to the hotel talk. Papers. Stay nice. I took more screenshots. Amount, time, account details. I didn't cancel it yet because I didn't know what would happen if I did. I just watched it sit there like a threat. Then I walked into the living room and saw a folder on the shelf that hadn't been there before. It was plain, but it was turned outward, like someone wanted it found. I touched it, then pulled my hand back. Was that folder bait? And if so, what trap was I about to step into? By morning, Milo was eating cereal and talking about a school project like the world was still safe. I kept my smile steady and packed his lunch with hands that didn't feel like mine. Brielle came home around 10, wearing the same outfit as the night before, but she walked in like she'd just had a restful sleep. She kissed Milo's head. Then she looked at me and her eyes went flat. "Why are you staring?" she asked. "I'm not," I lied. She rolled her eyes. "You always act weird." When Milo ran to his room, Brielle lowered her voice. "Don't start something," she warned, like I was the problem. I went to the bank on my lunch break and sat with a clerk who spoke softly and typed fast. I didn't mention cheating. I only asked about the transfer. The clerk told me the destination account was new and not in my name. My pulse thudded in my ears. I opened a separate checking account right then, just for my paycheck. It felt like crossing a line I had avoided for years. After work, I went to a free legal clinic downtown. A woman at the front desk handed me a form and said start with facts. Facts. I could do facts. I had timestamps. That night, Brielle asked, "You're going out again?" with a tight smile. "Just driving," I said. She nodded like she didn't care, but her fingers tapped her phone. Was she tracking my moves? And if she was, what story was she already building about me? On my next Uber shift, I kept my ears open, not for strangers, but for my own life. I drove until midnight, then parked and opened the shared tablet Brielle and I used for Milo's school stuff. It was still logged into her email. I told myself I shouldn't look. Then I remembered her laugh in my backseat and the word papers. I searched one name I heard in the hotel car, Colin. The results popped up fast. Dinner. Miss you. Delete this. Hotel again? My throat tightened. Colin wasn't a random man. He was Brielle's manager at the skincare store where she worked. I had met him once at their staff dinner. He shook my hand and called me buddy. I scrolled with shaking fingers and found an email thread with a file attached. The subject line said, "Separation plan. My vision blurred." I didn't open the file yet. I just took a photo of the screen with my phone, making sure the date and sender were visible. Then another message came in while I watched. From Colin, "Did you move the money like we said?" Brielle replied within seconds. "I started it. He won't notice." My stomach flipped. It wasn't just an affair. It was teamwork. I backed out and logged off, heart racing, then checked my Uber app again. A ride request flashed. Pickup, Lakeside Hotel. Was Brielle about to step into my car again, and what would she say this time? I accepted the ride before I could talk myself out of it. My whole body felt like a warning light. I drove to the Lakeside Hotel and waited by the curb, keeping my face turned slightly away from the rearview mirror. This time they came out arguing, not laughing. Brielle's shoulders were stiff. Colin's jaw worked like he was chewing anger. They got in. Colin slammed the door. "She's getting suspicious," Brielle hissed. Colin snapped. "Then act normal. You're the one who married a man who stares at bank apps like it's a hobby." Brielle scoffed. "He doesn't stare. He just mopes. It's exhausting." My chest burned. I wanted to turn around and say, "I'm right here." Instead, I drove. Colin leaned close to her. "We need the timeline clean," he said. "If he gets messy, we make him the messy one." Brielle went quiet for a second. "He'll beg," she said. "He always does." Then she laughed, soft and cruel. "I'll cry. Everyone believes me when I cry." I swallowed hard and took the next turn slowly. My dash cam caught everything. Voices, time, their faces when the streetlight hit them. At their drop-off, Brielle added, "Text me the lawyer's name again." Lawyer. So the papers were real. I drove away and pulled over, breathing fast. If they already had a lawyer, I needed one too. But first, did I tell someone for safety? Or did I keep this secret until I had a plan? The next day, I called my older sister, Paige, while Milo colored at the table. Paige answered with her usual bright voice, but it faded when I said, I need you to listen and not interrupt." I told her everything. Hotel, Uber, the money transfer, the emails. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Oh, Owen," she whispered, "I'm coming over." Paige arrived with a calm face and sharp eyes. She hugged Milo first, then looked at me like she was seeing bruises I had hidden for years. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're finally awake." That evening, Brielle walked in and saw Paige's car. Her smile froze. "Why is she here?" she asked. Paige kept her tone light. "Just visiting." Brielle's eyes flicked to me, warning. Later, when Paige took Milo to the backyard, Brielle cornered me in the kitchen. "Are you telling people our business?" she demanded. "No," I lied again. She leaned in close. "Good," she said softly, "because if you try to embarrass me, I will make sure you regret it." Then she walked away like she hadn't just threatened me. That night, Paige helped me scan my screenshots into a cloud folder. She said, "You need a lawyer who understands proof." I nodded. My hands shook as I opened the separation plan file I had avoided. It was a checklist. It included lines like claim emotional instability and request full custody first. My stomach dropped. If Brielle was already planning to paint me as unstable, what would she do next to make that lie look real? On Monday, I met with an attorney named Ms. Patel in a small office above a bakery. The smell of warm bread felt strange in a place where marriages ended. Ms. Patel listened without blinking while I laid out my screenshots and notes. When I mentioned the Uber rides, she leaned forward. "You have timestamps, location, and recorded voices?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I didn't set out to catch her, I just was there." Ms. Patel nodded once. "Then we move carefully. No shouting matches. No dramatic confrontations. We protect your child first." She explained that cheating wasn't always the main issue, but money and false claims mattered a lot. "If she's moving funds and planning a story, the court needs to know," she said. "And we need to show you stayed calm." I almost laughed at that. Calm was the only thing I had left. When I got home, Brielle was sitting at the table with Milo, helping him with homework. She looked like a perfect mom. Then Milo went to wash his hands and Brielle's face changed. "You've been acting different," she said. "I'm tired," I replied. She narrowed her eyes. "Don't lie to me," she said, like she owned truth. "If you're hiding something, I'll find it." My phone buzzed with another bank alert. The first transfer had cleared over the weekend. More money was gone. Brielle watched my face, and a small smile tugged at her mouth. "What's wrong?" she asked, fake sweet. I kept my voice steady. "Nothing." But inside I was shouting. If she was draining accounts, she could also be planning to run. So what did I lock down first? My finances, my home, or my custody rights? Tuesday night, Brielle tried a new move. She brought home takeout, smiled too wide, and said, "Let's reset. You've been stressed." It would have worked on old me. Old me would have been grateful for crumbs. We ate with Milo, and she laughed at his jokes. When he went to bed, she poured wine and sat close to me on the couch. "You know I love you," she said, stroking my arm. I stayed still. Her touch felt like a costume. She tilted her head. "Tell me what's going on," she said softly. "You've been distant." I swallowed. "Work has been a lot." Her eyes sharpened. "And Uber?" she asked. "You're gone late." I shrugged. "Bills." She sighed like I was a burden. Then she shifted fast from sweet to cold. "If you're spying on me, Owen, I swear I will destroy you," she said. "Milo will not stay with someone unstable." My heart pounded. I didn't answer. I didn't argue. I just watched her say the word unstable like she had practiced it in front of a mirror. Then she stood and walked toward the hallway, pausing long enough to toss one last line over her shoulder. "Don't make me your enemy." I sat in the dark after she left, breathing slow. Miss Patel had told me not to react, but this was no longer just pain. This was a threat to my child. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a message from Colin's number. "We need to talk about the story we agreed on." What story had Brielle promised him, and why was he texting me now? I didn't reply to Colin. I took a screenshot and sent it to Ms. Patel instead. Then I did something I had never done in my marriage. I told Brielle no. The next day, she asked me to sign a budget plan she printed out. It looked normal until I saw one line. Owen agrees to pay full rent if separation occurs. My hands went numb. I need time to read this, I said. Brielle's smile vanished. It's basic, she snapped. Sign it. I'm not signing anything today, I repeated. Her face twisted with anger. So you want war, she said. I want fairness, I answered, voice shaking but firm. She laughed, sharp and ugly. Fair. You can't even handle a simple talk without sulking. Then she did the worst part. She walked into Milo's room and came back holding his school folder. I'll tell the teacher you've been having episodes, she said quietly. I'll make it look real. My skin went cold. Paige had warned me Brielle would try to build a record. Now I was hearing it out loud. That night, I took Milo to Paige's place for a sleepover, and I packed a small bag in case we needed to leave fast. I also found something odd in the glove box of Brielle's car, a tiny hotel key sleeve. Why did she keep that sleeve, and what else was she hiding where she thought I'd never look? Thursday morning, while Brielle was at work, I searched the car again. I hated doing it. It made me feel like a stranger in my own life. But then I remembered her threat about Milo's teacher. I needed truth more than comfort. Under the passenger seat, taped to the metal frame, I found a second phone. It was cheap, cracked, and turned off. My hands shook as I powered it on. The lock screen showed a photo of Brielle and Colin in a mirror, smiling like teenagers. My stomach flipped. I didn't try to break in. I didn't need to. A message preview popped up on the screen, without opening anything. Did you tell him you were with your sister? Another. Don't forget to delete the ride receipts. Another. If he pushes, we say he followed you. I took pictures of the phone, the messages on the screen, and the location where I found it. Then I put it back exactly how it was. Ms. Patel had told me that moving evidence could backfire. That night, Brielle came home cheerful, like a person who didn't have a secret phone. She hugged Milo and asked about my day. When Milo went to brush his teeth, she turned to me and said, "Tomorrow, I'm going to a work dinner." I nodded. She smiled. "Don't wait up." My chest hurt. Work dinner meant hotel again, and now I knew they were planning to blame me for following. If I showed up with proof, would it protect me, or would it give her the excuse she wanted? Friday night, I drove Uber again, not because I wanted money, but because I needed the truth on record. I kept my dash cam on and my face hidden the same way. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. Pickup, Brielle, Lakeside Hotel. My stomach dropped like an elevator. I accepted. I told myself I was gathering proof, not chasing pain. Brielle and Colin stepped out together, but this time Brielle looked tense. She scanned the parking lot before getting in. Colin stayed close, like he expected trouble. When they slid into my back seat, Brielle said, "Take us to Pine Street." Colin muttered, "He's acting weird. What if he knows?" Brielle snapped, "He doesn't know anything. He never knows anything." I blinked hard. My eyes burned. Then Colin said something that made my whole body stiff. "If he fights the custody thing, we push the anger story." Brielle exhaled. "He won't fight," she said. "He's scared of being alone." I almost laughed from the shock. She didn't just cheat, she counted on my fear. At the drop-off, Colin's phone rang. He answered and said, "Yes, the account is ready. She's moving the last part next week." Account. Last part. So the money transfer wasn't a one-time panic. It was a plan. I pulled away and parked, hands shaking. I had dashcam audio, Uber receipts, and bank screenshots. But I still didn't know how deep this went. Was Brielle hiding money for herself, or was she hiding money for both of them? The next morning, I didn't confront Brielle. I took Milo to the park, pushed him on the swings, and tried not to cry in front of him. When he ran to the slide, I called Ms. Patel and told her about the second phone and the new ride. Her voice stayed calm. "We file this week," she said, "and we ask for temporary orders. You need stability for your son." That afternoon, Brielle's mom called me. Her voice sounded sweet, but the words were sharp. "Brielle says you've been acting controlling," she said. "She says you don't let her breathe." I almost dropped the phone. Brielle had started the story already. "I'm not controlling," I said. "I'm trying to keep our home safe." Her mom sighed. "Don't ruin this family over jealousy." Jealousy. Like I was upset over a crush, not a hotel, and a plan to take my child. That evening, Brielle came home and found me folding laundry. She watched me for a long moment. "You're being nice," she said slowly. "I'm being normal," I replied. She stepped closer. "Normal men don't hide things," she whispered. "If you're plotting, I'll make sure everyone sees who you really are." Then she kissed my cheek, cold and quick, like a stamp on an envelope. I stood there frozen, realizing she was laying groundwork with my own family. If she had already told people I was controlling, what would she claim next when the legal papers landed? On Sunday, we went to a family lunch at Paige's house. Brielle wore a bright dress and acted like the perfect wife. She laughed, helped in the kitchen, and kissed Milo's head in front of everyone. I watched her perform and felt sick. Paige caught my eye and gave a tiny nod, reminding me to stay steady. After lunch, while Paige showed Milo a board game, Brielle pulled me onto the porch. "Why are you so quiet?" she asked, voice sweet for anyone who might hear. I leaned closer and kept my voice low. "We need to talk later," I said. Her smile slipped. "About what?" I didn't answer. I didn't want a scene. Not here, not with Milo inside. Back home, when Milo was asleep, I finally spoke. "I know about the hotel," I said, calm. Brielle stared at me like I had spoken another language. Then she laughed. "You're imagining things," she said. "You do that. You spiral." "I have proof," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "Proof?" I took out my phone and showed her one screenshot only, the Uber ride receipt with her name and the hotel address. The color drained from her face so fast it was almost scary. Then she recovered and snapped, "So you stalked me." "I drove," I said. "You got in my car." She stood up, shaking with rage, and grabbed her phone. "I'm calling my mom," she hissed. "I'm calling everyone. You're not taking my son." My heart pounded. She didn't confess. She attacked. If her first move was to shout "stalker," how long until she tried to turn that lie into something official? Monday morning, Ms. Patel filed the separation papers and the request for temporary custody terms. I didn't feel proud. I felt like I was walking through a storm with Milo on my shoulders. Paige stayed close, and I kept Milo's routine normal. School, dinner, bedtime stories. Because kids notice when adults break. That afternoon, Brielle came home and found the papers on the table. Her mouth opened, then shut. Her eyes went wide, not with sadness, but with shock that I had moved first. "You did this behind my back," she said, voice shaking. "You did a lot behind my back," I replied. She threw the papers down and snapped, "You're trying to ruin me." "I'm trying to protect Milo," I said. Brielle started crying instantly, loud and dramatic. Then she wiped her tears and got quiet. "Colin said you'd do this," she whispered. "He said you'd try to control the story." I stared at her. "Colin is not part of our family," I said. She laughed through her tears. "He will be," she said. "When you're gone." That night, someone knocked on my door. I opened it and saw Colin standing there, hands in his pockets, smiling like this was a business meeting. "We should talk man to man," he said. My stomach clenched. Brielle stood behind me in the hallway, watching like she wanted a fight. If Colin was bold enough to come to my house, what was he planning to do next to push me into looking unstable? I didn't let Colin inside. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The air felt cold against my face, and my hands were shaking, but I kept them at my sides. Colin smiled like he pitied me. "Look," he said, "this doesn't have to get ugly." "It already is," I answered. He leaned closer. "Brielle deserves happiness. You've been dragging her down." My chest burned, but I didn't bite. "You picked a hotel," I said. "That's not happiness. That's hiding." Colin's smile twitched. "Careful," he said. If you keep this up, you'll lose more than you think." Behind the door, I heard Brielle's footsteps. I knew she was listening. I knew she wanted me to explode so she could point and say, "See?" I stayed calm. "Leave," I said. "Now." Colin's eyes turned hard. "Fine," he said, "but you should know she has people on her side." He walked away, and as he reached his car, he called back, "Oh, and that Uber thing? Everyone's going to hear you followed your wife." My throat went tight. He was threatening my name, my custody, my whole future. Inside, Brielle stood with her arms crossed. "Why didn't you hit him?" she asked, almost disappointed. I stared at her, stunned. She wanted me to become the monster in her story. If they couldn't make me explode, what other way could they try to break me? 2 days later, we went to mediation in a plain office with beige walls and a round table that felt too small for a broken family. Brielle arrived in soft clothes, eyes red like she had been crying for hours. Colin wasn't there, but he was in the air like smoke. Ms. Patel sat beside me, calm and steady. The mediator asked, "Can both of you agree on a temporary plan for Milo?" Brielle dabbed her eyes. "I'm scared," she said. "Owen has been watching me." My stomach twisted, but Ms. Patel raised one finger, telling me to wait. Then she slid documents across the table, Uber ride history with Brielle's name. The hotel address. The timestamps. A transcript of dashcam audio where Brielle and Colin talked about papers and an anger story. Bank alerts showing money moved to an account not in my name. Photos of the second phone's message previews. Brielle's crying stopped mid-sob, her face changed. The mediator's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Patel," he said, "is this accurate?" "Yes," Ms. Patel replied, "and we can verify it." Brielle's hands trembled. "He tricked me," she whispered. "No," the mediator said firmly, "he documented you." For the first time in months, I felt my spine straighten. Then the mediator pointed to the bank pages. "Why was money moved after this affair began?" he asked. Brielle opened her mouth, but no sound came out. If she couldn't explain the money, would she throw Colin under the bus? Or would she find a new lie that hurt me even more? The mediation didn't end with hugs. It ended with rules. The mediator recommended a temporary order. Milo would stay primarily with me during the week because my schedule was steady, and Brielle would have set days and times. No more surprise sleepovers. No more vague stories. He also recommended a hold on major money moves until the court reviewed the account transfers. Brielle stormed out, face tight. In the hallway she hissed, "You ruined everything." "I didn't," I said. "You did." Outside, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. It was a photo of a bank card in my name. My stomach dropped. The message read, "You should check your credit report." Ms. Patel's eyes went sharp when I showed her. "This could be serious," she said. "We'll pull records today." We did, and there it was. A credit card opened 3 months ago with my information, but a billing address I had never used. The balance was huge. The charges were hotel stays, gifts, and transfers. My skin went cold. I hadn't only been cheated on, I had been used. That evening, Brielle called me, voice sweet again. "We can fix this," she said. "Drop the legal stuff. We can do it quietly." "Quietly," I repeated, staring at the credit report. She sighed. "Don't be dramatic." Dramatic, like my whole life wasn't on fire. If Brielle had opened credit in my name, was that her idea, or was Colin using her to steal from me too? In the final hearing a week later, the judge didn't care about Brielle's tears. The judge cared about records. Ms. Patel presented the credit account details, the transfer trail, and the proof that Brielle had tried to paint me as unstable while planning money moves. The judge ordered the accounts reviewed and warned Brielle about false claims. The temporary custody plan stayed in place. I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like I could breathe again. After court, Brielle asked to talk in the parking lot. Her shoulders sagged like the weight finally hit her. "I didn't think you'd fight," she whispered. "That's the problem," I said. She looked up, eyes wet. "I was angry all the time," she admitted. "And you were easy to blame." I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to hug the past version of her. Another part of me remembered every insult, every threat, every time I tried to be gentle and got punished for it. "I'm not here to punish you," I said, "but I'm not letting you hurt me anymore." She nodded slowly. "What now?" "Now we co-parent," I said. "We stay civil, we follow the order, and you get help." That night I drove Uber one last time, not for money, but to prove to myself I was still in control of my own life. When my app offered a ride from the lakeside hotel, I stared at it for a long time. Then I declined and drove home to Milo, and I wondered how many people are still sitting in silence, thinking they have to stay small to keep peace.